Hi, everybody. We're just trying to get the live to work correctly. I'm so sorry about that. Benjamin, it does show invited for the first time in the right way, so please try it again. All right? Benjamin, if you can try to join the live one more time, because it is showing that I invited you correctly, or it's showing something different. Hi, Benjamin. If you can, I see that you're here. If you can accept, because I think it is working correctly now.
Yeah! Woohoo!
All right.
I was
All
watching
right, you guys, thank
you,
you so
trying to
much for the
connect.
patience.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Benjamin, for the patience. I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I'm going to do the quick intro. Like always, we have a packet that our grad students came up with. It's a lot of really cool resources for you guys. It's completely free. Head over to our website and download it right now so you can follow along. And you can find that in the link in the bio. Okay. Hi, Benjamin. So today we are sitting down with a learning specialist for ADHD called, his name is Benjamin Mizrahi, and I would love to give you a few minutes to explain what you do before we get started.
Wonderful. So I work with teenagers and their families, mainly those who have executive function weaknesses and or with or without ADHD, about learning and home dynamic.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so it is a very touchy subject. So I wanted to get started with basically what ADHD is and what it is not, okay, and how it is different in terms of like how you think from a regular person. So we did post a reel on this, and it's not like all inclusive. There's a lot of different symptoms of ADHD. So I wanted you to speak about what it looks like and how kids think differently.
Right. So over the years, I have been trying through my training, reading a lot of research about ADHD, trying to understand and also be able to explain to my family members, those who have ADHD, and my students who come with their evaluation in a way that illustrate exactly what it is. So first of all, it is not a terminal illness. It's not cancer, God forbid, or something like that. The word disorder, it's the word disorder of in ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, is very confusing. So let me tell you how I see it, and that this is the way I tell it to the people in my circle. So imagine there is an orchestra. Okay, this orchestra is made of different different instruments. Okay, and when the orchestra works together in harmony, it produces a melody or a music that is pleasant to listen to. This is our brain functioning. Okay, when the brain works well, there is harmony, and we are productive, we are successful, even if we don't reach the goal, but we are productive. We are doing something. Now, sometimes a few instruments, one or two or more, are not playing to the key in the right keys. Okay, so we feel that kind of not playing through the tone. It's still not ADHD. Okay, it's called life, right? Different that we have in life.
I like that you said that.
Yeah, yeah. So one or two or three instruments out of those 12 instruments together, okay, of the orchestra, when they play out of key, that's okay. That's life. The problem is that sometimes it's more than those three instruments that play out of key, and that's where we get into the area. It's a kind of a spectrum area of ADHD. Basically, ADHD is a cacophony that you have in your mind, doing your thing, living your life. Everything is in disharmony, and that makes things very hard to tolerate, very hard to to do things, and also many times being not being pleasant to be around, because of that disharmony.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to quickly jump in and add a little bit to that. So if you go to, I think it's like the second or third page of the packet, you will see ADHD iceberg, right? And so this page is really interesting, and I wanted to add it because basically what people think of when they think of ADHD is the top, the tip of the iceberg. So the things that people witness most easily, right? So it's the hyperactivity and being impulsive and not having attention, right? But this really cool diagram helps show you that a lot of ADHD is not visible, and it's about having low frustration tolerance and about learning problems that they have, where basically there's less working memory. They can't memorize things as easily because of that. There's also issues to sleep disturbances and things that are related to the way that dopamine and basically how the brain activity is processed. So there's a lot of different unseen or invisible symptoms that affect a child, and it's not just about being impulsive. It's not just about running around, right? So this is very helpful in terms of the parenting question that we got in from Pure Promise. So Pure Promise wanted to know what it looks like, and I hope the reel that we posted yesterday helps, and also the third page that kind of really shows the unseen factors that go into an ADHD kind of behavior issue and things like that, right? So here's the next question from a parent that I really wanted to get your input on, right? So a question that was sent in was, how do you protect self-esteem, right? Because these kids are going to deal with all of the issues that you said. Sometimes they're not pleasant to be around. Sometimes they have to deal with the same question in their homework 3-4 times, right? Or sometimes they can't just sit down and get their homework done. So how do you deal with or protect self-esteem?
All right. Let me start by shifting the focus. When we talk about kids with ADHD or with this the disharmony, we forget that there is a father, a mother, or a parent in the house that probably has this kind of difficulties. And when they have these kind of difficulties, when they encounter with the child's difficulties, it evokes something that is not pleasant at the parent. And then there is a projection of their own struggle. So we need to be mindful of the fact that the parent who sits there and he sees or she, they see that the homework, there is a problem with the homework. It does something, it stimulates something in them that then creates a cycle, quite a vicious cycle in the interaction at home. So before we focus on the child, and I know that we want to put the child at the center of this picture, I really call for all of us, parents, educators, to not put the child at the center. You know why? Because once we put the child at the center, we think of him as, or her, or them as the patients. They are not the patients. We are the patients, the parents, the caregivers.
I really like that.
Think about the rush hour that I call it, in the morning between 7 to 9, or now in the afternoon 5 to 9. The rush hour, we need to make sure that we are ready, that we are not checking emails, we are not on social media, that the phone is in a different room, so that we can be present for our children, and we are ready where we can predict what are the kind of difficulties. So let's assume that we have done that. Now let's delve into the issue of the self-esteem. We don't protect self-esteem, we build strong self-esteem. So we want to focus on building self-esteem, and that we do through in different dimensions. One of the main dimensions that I'm very fond of is creating family identity. When I say family identity, I say it's really asking ourselves in the family, asking the conversation, asking what do we stand for as a family? What are our core values? And this kind of conversation should take place, of course, with their child. We're not directing them toward a certain answer. We are there for the discussion, for the interaction, the constructive interaction. So we are building self-esteem. Another dimension that I use a lot is by filling their schedule, not too much, but with meaningful recreational activities, MRA, meaningful recreational activity.
Cool.
What do I mean by that? So in my case, my child, we want her to play an instrument, and we want her to do things after school that is, that involve physical activity, and that's something that she enjoys. The thing is that they're not always interested, right? They're not always interested. And when your child with ADHD is not interested in doing something, it's a red flag that you, the parent, is in a subtle way trying to impose your agenda on them. People with ADHD are very sensitive to overpowering or hovering or trying to take control. They're very sensitive to that. So if they even sense a tiny bit of it, they will back off. They will show some kind of a self-defense mechanism. So we want to fill their schedules by discovering with them, by observing what are those activities that really fill their heart. We call them habits of the hearts, that they find meaningful. And then through those activities, try to build very strong self-esteem. The third dimension is really the connection at home, making sure that we are present. We cannot do that if we don't put ourselves at the center.
Very cool. Okay, so you touched on so many things that were really, really great. So one, you just happened to talk about our reel today, which supports what you're saying. So there's many studies that show that the strongest way to support a child's resilience, especially ADHD, but in general, is to develop a family story, a family tradition that kids have, because it really supports so many parts of self-esteem, identity, and resilience, like we mentioned. So I really love that you touched on that. I hope everybody watches our reel today because it's very interesting stuff. But the second thing that you talked about that was so important is how parents react to a child with ADHD and how that continues cycles of frustration, right? And it just continues the problem over and over again. We touched on a strategy in yesterday's post, really focusing on the behavior and not the child. And so really talking about how you label a child and how bad that is, because it really has long-term impacts and what exactly you're doing incorrectly. So check that out. But also in our packet, we have intervention strategies for parents. And we're going to go through these very quickly, but I did want to mention one of the biggest points that we had in our packet is exactly what you mentioned. So parents can support a child, especially with focus and time management. And that was a question by It's Parenting Time, with what they contribute as the guide to the child. And so essentially, if you go to better time management, we give you step-by-step guide to 6 different ways that you can stop a repetitive problem by being the guide or the model in the moment, right? So these are things which is basically you figuring out, what early day reminder would avoid the problem, how you could prepare for the problem in advance, what time is the best time for a second reminder, what can you have ready to go so you're not facing the problem in the first place, what steps could you break down for a child, and what can be done after dinner or after school, like a very specific time that you have a go-to kind of schedule or routine, because schedules and routines are going to be how you help a child. And anticipating the problem, exactly what Benjamin mentioned, is how you step into kind of being the solution as opposed to helping the frustration. Because just like Benjamin mentioned, a lot of the parents also have ADHD, right? And so they're going to have frustrations. And even if they don't have ADHD themselves, they're dealing with the frustrations, right? And so I really love that you had all of kind of the suggestions that we came up with. You hit them right out the park there. But so I would love for you to speak to a few of the other interventions that parents can do. So praise and reward systems. What do you think about reward systems in general? I know some parents don't like using them or they like to phase them out, but how do you think reward systems help with kids in particular that have ADHD?
If you want to think about a reward system, think about a video game. A video game is the perfect reward system. You play according to the rules. You succeed in a task, then you move on to the next level. You get the points, right? You get life, whatever it is, and then you can use it after for the next level. The problem with reward system with families is that the number one problem is that we're not consistent. Let's say we have, and one day we follow the rules that we've made, and then the next day we don't. So kids, especially with ADHD, are extremely sensitive to these things, to those cracks in the systems when things don't work, and they will not tell you. Some of them will. Like I have two kids, so who have this kind of issues. One will tell me when I am kind of like forgetting, so she will remind me. The other one will not remind me. She'll just quit the game. Okay, and that really happened not long ago, where I forgot, because we do a reward system, and I try to be very consistent about it, but I'm a human being, so sometimes I forget too. So number one problem with the reward system is consistency. If you are able to do it consistently, meaning follow up with your child about the behavior that you would like to work on, that's great. The problem number two with reward system is that usually we kind of impose the goal on the child, and they resist, so it doesn't really work. For example, if I want my child to clean her room without my reminders, right? Most parents would just, if they use it in the reward system, they will just ask them to clean the room, tell them, okay, if you clean the room, then you're gonna get that reward. Okay, our kids need a little bit more of a buy-in, and I'm not talking about what they're gonna get after. They need to feel in control of the situation. Once they feel not in control of the situation, they will back out. So we need to invite them in a discussion. We're gonna explain them the value, why it is important for us, and how it helps us. The fact that they clean the room or organize. Then we're gonna be very careful in what we want them to do. And I'm sticking to that example of cleaning their room. That is another problem, is that we're being very broad and vague about the goal that we want to achieve, right? So clean up your room, and the child is like, what does that mean? Like, am I going to just clean the dust, around the doorpost? Like, what am I going to do? Am I just the toys or the books? I mean, by the way, I'm in my daughter's room. Okay, so I'm looking around, right? So you need to be very specific. So with my 8 years old, I was very specific. I said, I need you to do to clean your to organize your bed, and I showed her that. So I did it with her the first few times, and then I told her about the toys, and then I asked her, is this thing you think you can do, right? So I'm coaching her through the task. Now, another point about reward system is that we want to find out what kind of things they want to get at the end of that process. So, and the process needs to be not too long, because then they will not be able to see the reward. It's kind of like a mountain, and there is them and there is the reward. So if the reward is too far or the mountain is too high, they will just not see it. So they will not have the right motivation to put the efforts in order to achieve it.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of really good things. I think you only missed one part that I wanted you to speak on, and that is consequences. So, so parents, and this is one thing that's specific for kids with ADHD, and that's why I want you to speak about it. Sometimes parents take away privileges, which is, the most common, most effective thing, right? But with a kid with ADHD, is taking away a privilege for too long actually work against a parent? So I'm taking away, you can't play your game, you're grounded for 1 week. Will a kid that have ADHD do you lose leverage over, do they forget what they were punished about? And it hurts you kind of attaching the reward to the actual thing that you want them to get done.
So the rewards is a totally different topic. So we have rewards, how we build reward system, and we have consequences as a different topic. But I just want to touch base on what you said about because it's right. If you extend it, if you're being very harsh in terms of the consequence, if you extend the consequence for too long, what happens to them? They start to see themselves as victims. And when they start
so important.
victims, they become resentful. Not only they don't even think about what they did, their misdid, right? They become they're very angry and frustrated with you. So we have to be careful about what kind of consequences. It's a different topic though. Yeah.
Okay, well, why don't we touch on that? Because I think it's so important. Especially you're getting so frustrated with them, you have to remind them so often. How do you do consequences?
Well, it depends on the age. So I have a 4 years old, 8 and 12. So let's say we're talking about 12. It's really the tween. So with my 12 years old, when we talk about consequences, I attach it to I connect it to our values. You basically violated one of our values, and I explain her my view of the misbehavior and how it affects us and how it will affect her, and then I invite her in a conversation, because I need to make sure that she feels that she is part of it, part of the process. Now I'm talking about the 12 years old. Okay, I don't have to justify myself too much, but I need to provide some explanation, some rationale about about why I think that kind of behavior is wrong. I'll give you a quick example. She does have a phone with limited access and with limited number of applications and the kinds of applications on her phone. But one of our rules that we kind of enforce is that when we are in the car, she cannot be on the phone.
Okay, I like that.
Right. Yeah. So what happens is that we created a chart of essential needs and privileges. So there I explain her all the things we give her, right? I made a long list of the things we provide her, and then we sorted it out. For those, these are the essential needs, kind of like buying her clothes, the food, etc., right? Shelter, whatever. Then we have privileges. One of the privileges is the phone. So I said, when there is a consequence, privileges will be taken away. Okay, and then we say it will be for one day. Like, for example, if she's doing something that she can be impulsive and her comment will be disrespectful, right? So I tell her in advance. She needs to know in advance. It cannot be off just at the heat of the moment that I will say, okay, I'm taking your phone. Again, they will think of themselves as the victims. So it's a lose-lose situation. It's going to be very hard to manage, but they need to know in advance what will be the consequence. And if I see that it's a repetitive misbehavior, I will tell them, listen, this and this is happening. This is what I see, and these comments. I know that you're not trying to be disrespectful, but we need to make sure that you understand what happens when this happens. When you blurt out a disrespectful comment, because in our family, we don't talk like that. So we also circle it and connect it with around our family values. So I will take one of the privileges. Which privilege do you want me to take away? Is it the phone for one day, or your allowances, or TV time? Okay, whatever. We discuss it with them when they're calm, not at the heat of the moment. At the heat of the moment, we don't do any talking. We're not asking, why did you do that? Or now you're going to see what's going to happen. It's just not productive. It's a lose-lose situation.
Okay, I love that segue, because it actually speaks to one of the things that parents really need to do strongly for kids with ADHD, and that's emotional regulation. Now, emotional regulation is important for all kids, but kids with ADHD are going to have more impulsiveness. They're going to be quicker to anger, quicker to frustration. They have to repeatedly try at things. They might have issues with irritability from friends just over their behavior, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're going to have a strong resilience and strong ability to regulate emotions. And there is a sheet in our packet for that. There is I can challenge anger, and it helps a child work through things that make them angry, and basically break it down into what good coping methods match that thing that that gets them angry. It also helps them think through what they can do, how they feel when they're angry in this way, and what they think. And so it really helps a child go through the emotional regulation process, and it helps you help a child look at their behavior from an outside perspective. And I really liked the options that our students came up with down here, because we have distraction skills, relaxation skills, physical release, right? But also thinking skills. And that's one of the things that you mentioned. One of the ways that we bolster confidence is to grow it, not to protect it, and I really love that. But the ways that a child with ADHD would grow it is through having these go-to strategies. So ways that they think, either problem-solving strategies that they already have beforehand, or the ways that they challenge unhelpful thoughts beforehand. So Benjamin, why don't you speak to that very quickly before we move on?
Right, about emotional regulations. One thing that is very helpful in our with our brain is that we are creatures of patterns, and things repeat themselves, and just in different variations, but and places and times, of course. But we really, when we suffer from emotional dysregulation, we experience the same thing in different places or different times. But essentially, it's what stimulates our dysregulation is really the same thing. So what I do with my kids and my students is that we know what's going to happen. So this and that, the A, B, C, it's going to happen. So for example, today's Tuesday, Monday, they started a camp, a cooking camp. Okay, my girls. So on the way there, it's a 25-minute drive. On the way there, I asked them, what might happen? I mean, it's going to be a great program, but things happen, right? What can happen? And I said, usually we get angry or frustrated when the instructor is too controlling, or there is someone who's doing something silly in our group and we get irritated by it. What do you think? And I ask them, I invite them into conversation. What do you think can happen? And then how can we deal with it? In the best way that serves us, so that we don't put ourselves in the same, in the same problem, in the same, I would say, lack of ability to control the situation, the locus of control. So understanding.
And you see that practicing is like the best way, right?
Pardon?
You see that practicing situations beforehand is the best way, right?
Yeah. Acting, even like I did many times with my 8 years old, we acting it out. I was the teacher and she's the student, or I'm the student, she's the teacher. What could happen? And I tell her, things will happen, and you know what? That's okay. That's okay. We learn to accept ourselves. We're not trying to, using these terms, working memory, emotional regulation. It sounds so medical, and it sounds so in a way that we many times, we read these strategies. We need to make sure that we don't try to engineer our kids, and because they feel it, they feel that we're trying to change them, and then we tell them, "Oh, honey, you should accept yourself." But we are not acting that way, and we're all constantly trying to change them and to fix them. So we cannot be hypocrite about it. We want them to understand who they are, and the fact that everyone has weaknesses. Everyone at one point of his day is being dysregulated. It's just a matter of managing this harmony that we're talking about.
Yeah, I love that point. I mean, I think that's probably, an issue for a lot of the parents that are looking at this content all the time, right? So making sure that you are using the jargon, the words that match your child, and not kind of turning them into a patient when they're under 10 years old is very important, especially, and you're absolutely right, for a child accepting themselves. So I want to segue to the last section in our packet and what we have scheduled. Actually, no, second to last section, which is essentially how we help with school, right? So we have several pages in our packet for both the child and the parent to help them kind of situate a child into class, deal with a teacher, etc. One of the ones that we're very excited for is the resource for a child, which is this page. Let me introduce myself. And essentially, it lets the child fill in information that's specific to them to then hand this over to a teacher. And it's so important because basically you're giving the child is speaking from their perspective and letting a teacher know what helps them learn better, right? So they can, and you should be giving this to your teacher within the first 2 weeks of class or so, but it basically explains to them what your biggest weaknesses are, your biggest strengths, what you like to do in your spare time, your most difficult subjects, the things that you already have issues with, like sitting calmly in a seat for an hour. And so you want to tell a teacher that beforehand so that they can find ways to help your child as best as possible. We also have a few more resources, and this one is actually very important for parents. This one is conversation starters for parents. And I want you to speak about this, right? So parents go in to speak to a teacher ready to fight. And how do you recommend a parent goes into a teacher that is dealing with 25 to 30 kids, all with different needs? You know, how do you recommend a parent speak to a teacher?
Partnership. I think it's a major problem that and misconception that we've learned about in the past, I don't know, 10 years. The term parent advocate or a child advocate. The word advocate has a beautiful meaning, but it sounds different to many people. And as you said, people think sometimes that they need to be protective. So on day one, they come with their child as that protective parent, and that creates a very not helpful dynamic with the teacher. One thing, so I come from, okay, are you ready for a short anecdote? Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
So I come from a family of educators, and that's the lower school where I went. It was like two of my aunts were teaching there, okay, and the rest of the teachers were like friends of my mom. So there were some times where I was very handful and rowdy, okay, but I knew that if something happens, my mom will know about it before I arrive home. Like they were friends, yeah, they knew each other. And those years, the formative years of elementary school, were amazing for me because I felt that the teacher was there for me at all times. And I attribute it to the partnership between my mom and the teachers. Now, if you want to be your child advocate, you need to befriend your child's teacher. And when you speak to them on a regular basis, first of all, of course, when we talk about partnership, it's not just like call each other when there is a problem, when there is a question. You put yourself even on the calendar, you know, maybe once a week, sending an email or a WhatsApp message, just saying hello. Be very grateful. Always start with gratitude about something that you like that they're doing. And then when there is something that is, you know, there is an issue, you ask a question. And you ask a question, this is what I see. How can I help my child? What can we do? I'm a little bit confused. If you are coming as a child advocate and you're trying to teach your teacher, your child's teacher about what your child is going through, that's it. It's over. Because the teacher will become defensive, or they will go into a mode of like a defenselessness. They will not know what to do, and they will just categorize you as a problematic parent. You don't want that.
Yeah. For sure. I thought that was so important. And I know a parent's coming in with the intention to take care of their child. That's not, the right way to go about it, but really the communication is so emotionally charged that's why we wanted to make sure that we included that topic today. So parents, go over to Conversation Starters, and it basically gives you suggestions of how you should say things like, I'm concerned about ... what do you see as strengths for my child, ... as opposed to being accusatory. Obviously, a partnership is going to be way more successful for all of the reasons that you said. I really love your story, Benjamin, because it does make the point. One more page in our packet that helps kids is My Focus Plan. And it basically just helps a child walk through how to focus a particular task, and it just helps them form that mindset about breaking large things down into smaller tasks that are less overwhelming. So the last thing, the last question that we got from parents that I don't think we went over was products or actually, let's start with this. So natural products instead of medication. All right. So medication should, of course, there's certain kids that need medication. There's no way around it. They will have a better experience with medical support, with the whatever medication is recommended by their physician. But there are some parents that don't want that. They want natural options. We do have a new resource on our website today. You can see in our stories, we have full guides for different topics. But one of the things that we added was natural versions. So these are nootropics. These are natural versions of stimulants that are going to help focus. How do you feel about those? Do you keep kids away from them? Or do you think it's okay to use those early on?
It's a very important topic. I think we should have started with it because there is a problem about the concept of medication or the supplements. So I have a couple of things to say about it. I think supplements, I myself take saffron. I don't know yet how it helps me. I don't take any medication. Some of my family members do take a medication, and in terms of the medication, the families who come to me with a question about whether or not to medicate their child, I always quote Dr. Russell Berkeley, who says that there are 3 conditions that all of them need to be checked. You need to ask yourself as a parent before medicating your child. Is your child harmful to himself? Is it posing danger to himself? Okay, is self-harm, or they're just being very impulsive and they can engage in activities that are very dangerous, dangerous to others, violent, aggressive, things like that. And the third one is that, and third one is having severe issues with social skills, with reading social cues, and because of their impulsivity, they don't really hold what they think or what they feel. They blurt out comments that can hurt others, and that's how they basically lose friendships, a lot of them. But it's not just the friendship component or the being harmful to others, or to himself. It's all of them together that really requires then a medication. This is Dr. Russell Berkeley, which I follow in regard to medication, ADHD and medication. Now, when we talk about medication, many times, because it's easy for those who are pro-medication parents, it's easy for them to give the medication. They sometimes forget that we need to have meaningful recreational activities. So before we talk about medications, we need to make sure that your child is engaged after school or in the morning with a meaningful recreational activity that they like, that they feel that that fulfills them. Now with kids who have ADHD and adults, okay, the meaningful recreational activities, we always think about them as after school activities, right? The clubs, the chess club, the basketball. Yeah. It needs to be somehow in the morning. I know it's not doable. I know many parents say, but I have to be at work at 9 o'clock and my child needs to be at work. I know. Raising a child with ADHD is very challenging. You need to think out of the box. It is maybe not so practical, but this is my opinion. I think they need to start the day with a meaningful recreational activity. I don't know how you can fit in your day or in their schedule, but they need to start with a meaningful recreational activity. And if you cannot do it, and if you tried everything possible in your life, it must be. Your child cannot finish school and then come back home without a meaningful recreational activity. Forget about medication.
I love that. I really do love that for 2 reasons. One will be a segue, but the second, I mean, focus, it really for kids has to do with interest. Priming focus for the whole day by starting the day with meaningful activities that they're interested in. It sounds like such an advantage. Here, the second thing that I was thinking when you said this was one of the other resources or tools that we found, which was a balance board, wooden balance boards. How do you feel about that? So essentially, what our grad students found was that balance boards are specifically helpful for kids with ADHD because it helps the cerebellum, which is the area in the brain that is most affected by ADHD. ADHD, and balancing helps strengthen the cerebellum and help some processes there. What do you think about having the child do some, maybe that's something that could be done in the morning, some balance board activity, you know, at any time of the day? But what do you think about those?
Try it at home. Try it at home with a positive attitude and see if it works. See if your child likes it. Let's say we say research shows that 100% there's 100% success using the bouncing ball, but my child doesn't want it. So what am I going to do? So I'm not going to tell parents you should do it, because then they will start. Some of them can start imposing it on their child, and it creates a very very bad dynamic. So if there is something, present it. Try it with your child. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That we need to be flexible and we need to try different things. I want to be consistent, of course, but whatever works. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking of different physical-based activities, just because a lot of getting the physical part out does help a lot, and that's kind of one of the recommendations we came up with. But is there anything that you would recommend in particular for parents, like something that has worked for your children, particularly in the morning, maybe a recreational activity that they gravitate towards?
In terms of recreational activities, so
yeah, like what do they like?
Right, it needs to be physical. One needs to be physical, and the other one needs to be more cognitive-based activity. So when I say physical, something, you know, movement, sport activity, or dance, or something like that. Yeah, and more cognitive task or activity can be chess, can be I don't know, maybe coding. My daughter, my 8 years old, is going to do coding soon. So it really depends on your child, but just have in mind cognitive, physical. That is really the two categories that you want to think about. One more thing I want to add. Always the guiding principle is a question, basically, is that when you do something with your child, when you want to implement something with your child, ask yourself, is it my agenda, or is it really something that I want for my child because he or she showed me that it's good for them and that it helps them? And if it does, always the latter takes priority over the former. We need to be careful not to bring our agenda, especially in this society, in this time, this era, where we live. Many of us think of our kids as our trophies. We want to show off. And then we post it on social media. We want to take a picture or a video in their game or something like that. We really want to post. We do it subconsciously, but our kids are not our trophies. They're not. We are here to help them grow healthy and happy, and they're not our trophies. So whatever we want to do with them, make sure that it's not bringing your agenda.
Yeah, I really I think that's so important, and I really love that point, especially with a kid that is, you know, constantly struggling with some of these issues and going to have those self-esteem issues already. Having a very critical or kind of helicopter parent has a lot of like a lot of stakes on your performance is really stressful. So if there's anything else that you'd like to add, we went through the full packet, and we have pretty much everything covered. I think most of the questions by parents were answered. GB McMail, if we didn't cover the specific product that you wanted to know, DM me, and I'll get Benjamin to give me an opinion on it, and I will forward it to you. But if you want to add anything else, please let me know. Also, actually, this would be a great thing for you to add. How do you specifically help kids with homework? Like, what exactly are you doing with a family and with a child? Are you figuring out and asking questions to find what solutions best fit them? Or how are you helping them one-on-one?
So there are two kinds of homework. There is the paper-based homework, and there is the computerized homework. Computerized homework are all these softwares being assigned to our kids, and they basically, it's very independent. Sometimes they may need our help. We want to make sure something is called the approximate developmental zone, the zone of proximal development. Sorry, that means that our child is in a certain level, and when the task is too high from where they are, then their motivation will be very low to try to attain the task. We want to make sure that the task is not too difficult for them. So we need to, I know it's difficult, but in terms of homework, we need to review the homework before they start doing it and try to understand with them, is it something you can do by yourself or you need my help? And then figure out why he needs or why they need help with the homework, what's happening, why the gap is too wide. That's one thing. Another is about a routine. You see, I have an after-school learning center where we learned study skills to enhance our executive function. So one of the routines that I embedded in the program is called the H2O. Basically, in every family, a child sits down to do homework when the homework is assigned, right? So there is a routine of homework when the teacher assigns homework. When the teacher does not assign homework, they don't sit down. So for a child with ADHD, that lack of consistency or the inconsistent schedule of what's going to happen after school is extremely difficult. You know why? Because if there is no homework, what am I going to do? I'm going to play video games. I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to play basketball. Can you imagine putting this on the scales? Homework, playing video games. So I really hope that the teacher will not assign homework, or even if they assign, I may trick my parents and say that I did it already, okay? But what if we embed in the schedule a homework routine? And that homework routine will be made of, a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour, depends on your child's age, where we do homework, but we also review the material. And when we review the material that they're studying and organizing their folders, we have it every day for 4 or 5 times a week, where it's only 1 hour. So that routine will not change even on nights before tests, because if they get used to sit down, they know that they will be sitting down for an hour or standing up, right? Dedicating that time for school or review after school. Rather than every day, it's a fluctuating schedule. And that is a no-no for a child with ADHD.
Yeah,
they don't do well with the schedule that is changing, especially if there is a pleasurable activity that is waiting for them.
Yeah, I love that. I in the packet there, it does mention homework hour, which I completely forgot to mention. But you're absolutely right. That is one of the biggest problems with scheduling and routine for a child. If they don't have homework one of the days, that was a great suggestion. You said adding review time into the homework hour is a genius way to get to keep the continuity, and I love that. All right, so basically what you're doing is you're sitting down and creating strong habits that are consistent related to schoolwork. Okay, and that's what. And what do you coach? How do you coach parents? How do you help a parent? Do you basically give recommended strategies, or do you coach them on what their reactions?
Yeah, first and foremost, I try to understand how their symptoms basically causing those negative dynamics between their kids. And it's usually 95% of the times it's their symptoms. It's the symptoms of their ADHD or their lack of knowledge or bias that is really creating that negative dynamic at home, or setting high expectations, not being consistent, imposing on their children, unrealistic rules and routines, things that they cannot even follow. So these are the things that we are trying to basically unravel and then create ourselves like some kind of a clarity of what is it that we really want, what is it that we really going to work for us, and then we build a plan to achieve that.
Yeah, I love that. All right, awesome. So I hope that today's live was helpful for you guys. It was full of so much information, and if you guys want some one-on-one help for your child with strategies that are specific to you and your child's needs, I hope that you reach out to Benjamin. He is the first resource that we have listed on our ADHD page under professionals, and so you can also find him there. If you guys have have any questions, you can always DM me, and I will be the liaison between Benjamin and getting you answers. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Take care. Thanks for having me.